kind of wanted to talk about today. I've been looking at results quite a bit lately, especially over the last 2 days. Um, Yesterday, I kind of went at the call center a little bit, and then also went at our marketing director because I believe they're great people, but sometimes people lose sight and lose vision, right? And is my job to try to make sure you guys get into as many great homes that you can do to make sure you're being successful, right? And make sure I give you the tools and resources to do so. And if we're not basically providing those tools and resources, or we're putting you in positions that aren't allowing you to be successful, then again, I need to monitor that and police it, right? So we're doing a good job, displaying the leads correctly, and making sure that, again, we're giving the right information, right? Because we know garbage in, garbage out, meaning that if the information put in the system's garbage, it's impossible to monitor, right? You can't manage chaos. You can manage a system and a process. So what I was looking at, and, before we get started, there was like a quotation that I was looking at. I thought was pretty darn good. I was in a group yesterday, and this wasn't from yesterday's meeting, but this was one that was a couple ago, and it really talks about looking at certain aspects, right? There's this lead setting program that I sit on a conference call that's pretty cool data, where literally it gives me data, looks at the buying habits of the customer, where they shop, their social preferences, their age demographic, what like scales them down, almost does a like a prejudge for you, right? Because let's face it, as sales representatives, we like to prejudge, and we like to figure out and kind of get ourselves wet and prepare ourselves for the appointment. But sometimes that prejudging can take us in the opposite direction more than the correct objection, right? Because in my mind is, you got to pay attention to the never rule. And it always reminds me when I go through training or I'm training somebody new, that you got to remind yourself of that 100% of the time you walk into it, because, when you surround yourself with people, obviously you got to be careful, right? So you got to remember that never rule. Never will I ever decide whether or not somebody will or will not buy my products or services, right? That's not up to you to decide that. Your job, because obviously you're running a lead that costs the company or between 550 to 750 bucks, right? So if you paid 550 to 750 bucks, how well would you take care of that lead, and what would you do to make sure that that was successful? I think all of us, if we had to release of 550, much less 750 bucks, right? Which is Larry's money he spends to get us those leads, right? So if you got 2 leads in a day, you're anywhere between $1,100 to $1,500 just paid for the lead itself. That's not counting your time or acquisition, which is why each lead, if you look at it based on our performance for the month, is anywhere between, when we're not doing very well, about $3,800 per lead. That's what the value of that lead is to the company. Your value of that lead, if you took it and your revenue per lead was $3,800, would be about $350 every time you knock on a door. That's what your possibility of making at the bare minimum, what you make on average. So if you don't look at it that you're $350 invested into that lead every time you walk into it, and you don't realize that that's how much it cost you in your time to run that, and obviously it costs Larry not just $1,050 or the $1,100 or the $1,500, it costs close to $5,000 for that. Now, if you're playing out of body and you're one of these people that are doing great, that have a $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 revenue per lead, obviously the value of that lead gets greater based on the performance and the person we're putting in that house, right? So that's why making sure that we never prejudge, because how many times we walked in a house, didn't think there was a prayer, and we ended up walking out with a cell, right? So one of the things I wanted to read to you real quick before we get going on today's topic, they talked about monitoring your intake, right? And this is a kind of different conversation, but if you monitor your intake, right, what are you listening to right now, right? Because the top and base of the media, it's on social media, it's scare tactics, known to man, trying to scare America into going out. Like you saw my little post of saw my little post Arnold Schwarzenegger about the toilet paper today. So again, we want to make sure we don't get ourselves wrapped into something you can't control. Even if you worry about it to death and you worry about coronavirus, are you going to change it? And the answer to that is absolutely not. So we have to figure out what we can control, right? So what is the intake you're taking in right now? Are you being sucked into that, worried about you can't buy toilet paper? What are those things you're looking at that you can control, right? So again, manage your mind. What is coming in your mind and what do you let is staying in your mind, right? Remember we talked about, 80% of basically your experience as a child are negative, right? And a lot of it's due to your experiences. So you always got to ask yourself, what is it? Why am I thinking that? Do I believe it? And then number 3, should I allow that to happen in my life, right? So if I look at these things that I'm trying to accomplish, there's a big deal about what's going on in my mind and my mindset, right? What audiobook are you listening to right now? How many of you listened to already this year? You should have at least listened to one, if not 2, because we're just done with February. So if you're doing a book a month or reading the same book twice, that would be 1 to 2, right? So again, what are you putting in between years? Maybe it's an audio program of a meeting you did or a Zoom meeting here, right? All that stuff counts, but we got to constantly be putting things in between our ears that are helping us get to that next level. And one of the things that you should be not thankful for, but you should be mindful of, remember, 8-11 receptors in the brain are based off fear. Look at media. Media is fear-based, right? So if you look at basically things like coronavirus, America jumps onto that because they like negativity. They like survival. They like things that allow you to go. And it's just not because people want to be that way. It's kind of how we're wired. So if we look at it, we got to, again, control the thoughts we're letting get to us and don't make excuses going in our brain, right? So, maintain your group or your surroundings, right? So who are the 5 people you talk to right now, right? Your last 5 interactions with those people, what have they been? Have they been positive? Have they been negative? Have they made you fear? Have they made you doubt yourself? What are things that they've done? Are they lifted you up, created positivity, gave you affirmations, talked about different ways that are unique to take you to that next level? So again, identify and isolate the people you surround yourself with, because, you become the 5 people you hang around with the most, right? So especially in times like that, you really have to think about who you're letting in between your ears, right? Because your biggest tool as a sales representative or a design consultant is what's sitting in between your ears. And if you let something damage that 6-8 inches between your ears, then again, you are literally allowing someone else to dictate your future. So be very careful with who you let in there, right? If you hang out with the wise, you become wise, right? If you hang out with the negative, you'll become negative, right? Complainers. If you hang out with complainers, you become a complainer, right? So again, think about it. You become what you think about the most. And unfortunately, your environment and your surroundings are there. And as much as you think you can change some people, sometimes you can't. And if you see them down that same negative path, run away. Don't allow yourself to be sucked in the funnel of negativity, right? Because if so, what happens is your results go down key too, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing those little things that basically turn to big things. Whenever you talk about your results, you talk about not giving effort, whether it be 100%, magnify your consequences, right? Magnify your consequences. If every time you walked into a house or walked up to a house, and whether you were successful or not depended on whether you could put food on your table, whether it depended on you could pay your bill, or depended on basically the ability to get another appointment, whatever it might be, magnify your consequences, right? If they don't do this, maybe magnify it based on their consequences if you don't want to put it on yourself, right? If I don't help them do this, then this is going to happen to them. They could possibly get taken advantage out there in the industry. So if I'm not, again, putting myself in a position where I can help myself succeed, then again, I'm setting myself up for failure. And I've got to, again, realize those things that are going between my ears and how I can dictate that, right? So again, you hang out with complainers, you're going to become a complainer. You hang out with a negative, it's only inevitable you're going to become negative, right? I always joke around about The Office, right? And I've nicknamed Scott Shank Chicken Little, right? Because every time he brings a problem, the sky's falling, right? And rather than coming up with the solution, which he'll do that from time to time, a lot of times it's fear-based. Oh my God, we're going to lose money. Oh my gosh, right there, right? That's his personality. If I spent my whole day with him, I would probably have to put my head in a hole and become an ostrich. So the one thing about it, I love the guy, but he's good for a segment of the business, but he would not be a good guy to have on the sales team, setting side by side, be an accountability partner with. Because eventually what would happen is you'd start looking at things through the negative and not the positive. So again, there's different people you need in your life for checks and balances. Not always positive things happen to positive people, but again, we got to isolate our mindset before we walk into it. Now, let's talk about today. Hopefully that touches a little bit, right? So you want to hang out with the wise, you become wise. Remember, if you're taking advice from somebody, is it somebody you would want to change positions with in that segment of their life? It doesn't mean they have to have it all together, but they might be better than you at some segment, or you strive to be as good as them in one segment of the business, then that's who I would take advice from. But again, if you look at them and you're like, they're a disaster, but they're trying to give me advice. Well, number one, if you're that way and you know you're not strong, why would you be giving advice if you haven't mastered it yourself? And number two, you can give your opinion. But again, advice is a tough thing to give, especially if it's wrong advice. Because you get somebody new, nurturing, you give them the wrong advice, and literally they can take you down the next level, right? And if you're trying to sabotage people, karma is a mother effer. So you want to be very careful with that. Okay. So next thing, let's talk about this. I think our culture is fantastic. But again, we got to remember our mindset, especially in times where the freaking media's got all over, right? If you're a TV watcher, you know, that's a dangerous time to be a TV watcher. So it doesn't change the task at hand. We still got tons of leads, right? The only people, you know, the medical industry, which I kind of giggle, my wife is part of the medical industry. They don't fear anything. They're not scared, right? Because they realize it's like a flu. It lasts a little bit longer than normal flu, but it's like a flu. The mortality rate, instead of being 1%, is 4%, right? So if you got 100 people, rather than one dying, 4 die. That's okay. It's a little tougher flu. There's nothing crazy about it where we need to be fearing life. Okay. We need to use precautions and be safe, but some people are taking it overboard. We look at this next part of it. Let's talk about the last couple appointments. Let's talk about your last 5 appointments, right? Now, there's some things we can't handle. And I identified on the Windows side of it, we're running quite a few appointments that we could not handle by what the stats told us. But we can always do something different. So let's talk about a few things, right? Because in my mind, when we talk about dispositions, there's talk about things we can't control, no demos we can't control, which means they're wanting something other than what we sell. Maybe it's broken glass and they refuse to take a look at their windows. I may have a hard time believing if they have broken glass in one of their old nasty windows, we can't talk them into taking a look at a new window. I have a hard time believing that. That just means we didn't want to put the effort. We're looking for the quick out, right? You know, remember, gas is $3 to $3.70 a gallon, $4 a gallon, depending on what kind of gas that you're putting inside your car, right? So be very careful. You know, you're invested into that. Larry's invested into that. You're invested. Make sure we give 100%. We're looking for every reason to present, not reasons to run away. Okay. That no demo counts 0 for 1. Counts the same as a demo no sell. So if it counts exactly the same, which sucks, you might as well give the opportunity and try to make something happen. Okay. At the end of it, if it still doesn't happen, hey, you gave it 100% shot, and it looks basically as a 0 for 1 no matter what. It's an uncontrollable, and it's something that we don't want to make sure we're getting ourselves wrapped around. But again, we're looking for those reasons to present. Secondly, is a one party, right? We got those insistent one parties out there. We know if we don't take a shot, we're never going to get that shot again. So again, we present it, but we treat those people that make us present just like they're 2 parties, right? Still got to set up in the very beginning, making sure that we set ourselves up to let them know that, you know, that cost savings program, we're going to give you 3 prices a day. You know, first one's good for a year. That protects you against price increases. Again, that's the worst it's ever going to get. You did call us off promotional discount. You know, we're going to go ahead and offer that. Can I see that one? Good. Looks like it's good till the 31st of the month. By the way, did they explain to you what our cost savings program is? No. You know, several years ago, we hired a efficiency expert, realizing we were coming back and making 2, 3, 4 trips out to the house. And again, that was really costly to the company. And obviously, if I'd have shown up today, and if I'd have been on my way here today, but my customer yesterday called back and said, come back right now and write it up, and it's a $30,000 order, or you're not going to get the business because I'm going out of town for the next 2 weeks, I apologize, but I'm probably not showing up. And if I did that, and I did that multiple times, how would that fare for our reputation? Not to mention, how would that make you feel? Great. So to prevent things like that from happening and major scheduling conflicts, we give you an opportunity to save a discount at the time of the appointment to help us prevent from having scheduling error or scheduling conflicts, and not to mention create more time to go see new people, right? So if you like what you see and trust me to do the work, or trust us to do the work through there, we'll encourage you to get started, but I don't want to share something and take it away if you're not ready to use it. So be sure to ask me at the end if you feel like that's a value for you, right? I understand your husband, wife isn't here, but again, that is an opportunity that we share with everybody on the initial visit. Okay. Now, if you run into that person and now you can't get them to move, obviously, but they haven't told you no, or go pound sand, or that's just too much money, or my husband or wife would never go for that, then if you don't set a date and time for follow-up, you didn't execute the plan. You have a wish ticket, right? I'm going to call them next Tuesday. I'm going to call them next Thursday. That's not follow-up. That's not an exact date and plan. You're not following protocol, right? A date and time. Even if you got to change that date and time, you still get a date and time. Hey, if you had to go to the doctor on Wednesday and Wednesday come and you just knew you were going to the doctor on Wednesday, what are you going to do? Go sit in the waiting room all day long? No, you want to know exactly what time you need to be there and what time maybe you need to fill out your extra paperwork. So again, it's a scheduled appointment. If you don't schedule another appointment for it and you just put the day, that's a wish ticket, because the likelihood you're going to catch them in that entire day time frame, you're going to be chasing them down, right? You're going to be sitting there picking up the bat phone, waiting for somebody to call you back. And therefore, you're probably going to be less productive because you're trying to cash that check already before you have it. You can't cash it. If you don't set a date and time, again, you might as well not even waste your time with it. Because again, you just gave away that appointment to the competition or your rehash. So we want to make sure we do everything we can on that to make a big difference, right? If it's a one-party reset, meaning that we get in there, real one-party reset. I know we mark the one parties as one-party resets, but we mark the one parties. If it's a one-party reset, means that we walk in the house, they realize real quick, but when you explain a few things and go through the inspection and find the reasons why they need to reset the appointment, and they agree that they can't make a decision without their husband as far as colors, designs, choices, because there's over 100 different configurations on a bathroom. There's over several hundred configurations on windows and doors that we have to pick out through here, which all dramatically increase the cost or decrease the cost on that. So last thing I'd want to do is let you pick out exactly what you want and not be what your spouse wants, because it is free on the initial visit. The appointment is, if we had to come back 3-4 times, obviously we'd be like box stores and start charging you $50 to $150 for the appointment. And we don't want to do that. So is there a better time that might work best for you guys, so we can get all that detail together so we can make sure it's an accurate quote, so when you do make the decision, we don't have to worry about that. So think about the ways that you're going to announce it, right? You got to make it make sense. You got to do it just like you're talking. Don't sound scripted. So that would be technically, if they said, no, I can't make a decision, well, let's get the call center on the phone real quick. And by the way, if you do the first one, the one party, let's get the call center on the phone real quick. And let's go ahead and set that up for next Tuesday at 2:00. So again, we know basically when they're going to come out, or so we know that that's a scheduled appointment if you're going to go back out. If you're just getting a phone call, nah, don't do it. Just put it in the notes. Because again, you don't want to burn, unless you're willing to burn another appointment to go back and see the same one you already saw, don't do that, okay? There's a Einstein's definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. If you know there's no sale there and you've dug in, and by the end of it, you got your hunch and feeling that there's no way in hell, but you take yourself off the schedule to go back and see that, probably not the right thing to do. Check the box and move on to the next one, unfortunately. Okay. But again, if you do see a tail, you know there's a deal there and you feel it in your heart there's something, then date and time for follow-up is the only way to do that if you don't get the business on the same day. And again, the only way we should be doing any follow-up if it's a condition. Because we know on the demo no sales, the best time to make an educated and logical decision is when the facts are in front of you, right? There's closing videos, there's aspects, there's scenarios in there that allow you to move forward. But again, if we don't do this next segment we're going to talk about, then nobody's actually going to feel like they're obligated to move forward. And if you treat yourself like a commodity, which means you allow yourself to compete on price and price only, this gig, if you're still thinking that the product and the price sell all these jobs, you're missing something. You have not been listening for the last year to months. You sell a solution to their problems, right? You use the products to help you get that solution, but you have to build a solution that is unique and it is center focused based on the customer, not you. If you're the expert and you walk in and you're telling them everything they need and everything they want, everything they desire, and you're telling them why everything is, why Dream Style or why the product is what they need in their house, that's okay after you've established yourself as a professional and you've established it that it's part of their criteria moving forward on a project, right? So let's talk about the difference between picking up leaves and pulling roots. Because I think a lot of us feel like we do a good job asking questions, but a lot of us, what we do is we call surface, which means instead of digging a ditch, we basically are kicking dirt. And what I mean by that is we never get deep enough to pull a root. We're just kicking the weed off the surface, right? You ever been there, see a little weed, and you kind of take your foot and you kick it off the surface so you can't see it, and you pick it up and throw it in the trash. But literally a couple days later, that weed's rooted again. So again, when you look at it, how do I pull the weed compared to just basically skim the surface, right? Pick the leaf up. So it a lot of times comes in the questions we ask, right? On Monday, we put out something called needs analysis, right? So we talk about that is like what they have now. If we look at what somebody has now, then we got to make sure, again, we pay deep attention to that, right? So guys, obviously you call us out, take a look at it. We'll put you in a position to be remodeling your bathroom. Okay. Well, tell me what's going on. Why is that going? What do you have in there now? I've got tile, or I have aluminum windows. Okay. Let me ask you, are those aluminum windows, are they original to the house? Did you guys have them put in at some point? What happened? Now, even though you know the answer, don't seem to think you understand. Make sure you understand. Maybe they put retrofit aluminum windows. You don't know. Maybe they put the tile job in there themselves and it's a disaster. You don't know that. So again, remember, in order to sell John Brown what John Brown buys, I must first see John Brown through John Brown's eyes. If I don't have myself dialected and dig into what they're doing, then again, I'm just kicking the surface. And asking a question to kick the surface, you're not doing yourself any favor, right? So you guys, what do you have now? I have this, I have this. Okay, well, great. Let me ask you, what do you guys enjoy about that? Well, we don't really enjoy anything. Okay, well, nothing at all? I mean, you don't like the sides of the windows, the view, basically you don't like the ease of cleaning. What is it that caused you to basically want to change something? Right, when you bought the house, what did you think about? Were you thinking about changing them then? All 8 years, I think you told me when we walked in the door? Well, no. We've just been thinking about the last 4 years. Okay, well, what changed in the last 4 years? Well, they're getting harder to operate and literally they allowed a lot of heat in. Okay, so is that the reason you call us out? Yeah, it is. I think the heat is more of that, and the operation's a pain in the butt too. Okay, well, tell me about the heat. How long have you noticed the heat coming in? Did it just happen, or has it been happening since the entire time you bought the house? Well, really, we started noticing it pretty bad about 4 years ago. Oh, wow. What do you think changed? Well, I think basically this, and this changed. Okay, well, then why do you feel that's important? Why do you think that might have caused it? Great. What do you feel could be a problem there? Matter of fact, since you're giving me more than 3 things on that window now, and I'm sitting at the table, let me get up and let's go take a look at the windows real quick, and I want you to show me. So remember, at the table is one thing, but again, when it's sitting in front of their face, that's a different thing. Don't spend too much time sitting at the table and getting stagnant. Remember, objects at rest stay at rest. Objects in motion go in motion, right? So I know the red and the yellow we're going to take to the window because we don't want to be trapped in the friend zone, and we don't want to basically piss them off before we get started and walk ourselves away from that deal, right? Our blues and our whites, we might sit down at the table and do a little pre-analyzation, right? But again, we want to find out how long they've been thinking about doing the project, what stood in the way from getting them done with the project. Things must be better now, right? And then it's hard as hell to inspect a window sitting at the table, right? But we got to get them going. We got to get them talking. We got to get them to be our friend a little bit, right? We got to break the barrier a little bit and make them want to trust us. So depending on that, that's how we go. The red gets trusted for action. They like action and you're not wasting their time. That builds trust, right? So again, we get to that first window or door. Let's talk about window or door right here. That first window or door, then we have to sit there and set back. Our first inkling as trying to be the professional or the window or door guy is to start diarrhea in the mouth, giving too much information. We don't want to do that. We want to sit back and say, okay, you shared with me heat coming in. When you say heat coming in, where are you noticing the heat coming through? Is it through the frames, through the glass? Where you go? Where do you notice it? Can you show me? And literally have them sit there and tell you what's wrong and why they do it. He or she who speaks the most does not win. Asking a question is there. If you're one of those people that get into this point when you're first starting and you have 10 talking points or 5 talking points or even 3 talking points that you feel are so important you have to talk about every single time you walk in that house, that's a problem. If you take those talking points now, and I might not be hitting my numbers where I need to be. If you're up there in the 50, 60%, don't change a thing, right? But if you're down there in the 20s or even teens, which is disgusting, we got to figure out what it is causing that, right? Number one is the results, or number two, am I getting diarrhea of the mouth? Am I not doing a good enough job asking questions, listening, right? One of the things I say, take your favorite statements down, right? Take your favorite statements down. Because a statement is just literally, you're throwing out your hypothesis, which is your educated opinion on something, right? And some people might believe that or not believe it. But if you throw out a bunch of things that aren't relevant to their situation or they don't care about, you're wasting your time. I'm not telling you not to cover it, but there's a time and place to cover it. So think about taking those statements real quick. Write them down. You write those statements down. Maybe it's I want to talk about air infiltration, conduction, convection, solar heat gain. I want to talk about weather stripping. I want to talk about glazing bead. I want to talk about basically the spacer system sticking out past the frame. You can utilize the same type of stuff on bathrooms. You just take the bathroom stuff of it and you kind of layer it into it again. And you grab those things and you start turning your statements into questions, right? Now, how do I ask a question on that? How do I make sure that that happens, right? When I'm inspecting a window or a door, there's 3 parts to it, right? There's the glass, there's the frame, and the components, I guess, in there. And then there's the installation. There's 3 major things that you have to quantify are going to take care of that problem they called you for or not, right? So the frame, will it withstand the conditions and environment it's going into, right? If you become a vinyl window salesman and you live your whole life trying to be a vinyl window salesman, you're going to swim in a sea of sameness. So again, if you're not talking the right words as far as polymer and other aspects and separating yourself, using like you're doing the Provia, doing the technology on the app, right, that makes you fall in love with it. If you're selling a door and you're not taking a picture of their door on the Provia app and download and then dropping it on their front door or back door and letting them change the options and get emotionally involved into that during your basically design phase, we're not doing everything we can do. But before we do that, we got to give pain. Because if I ask basic questions, well, we know our windows suck and we don't need to replace them. Or we know we need to replace them. Okay, that's good. You got your need commitment. They gave you your need commitment, which is more powerful than you giving the need commitment. But again, you didn't dig down why. What's a slice of life, right? Are you good at getting a slice of life that people are put into that caused them to get to that situation? What is it? Tell me about cleaning, or tell me about operational liability. When did you first notice this and what were you doing? What room were you in? Tell me why. Tell me why. Tell me how it happened. Have them relive the story for you, man. If you can get a slice of life out of people where they start telling you the story behind the reason why, it's there. There's a whole book called Start With Why, right? Simon Sinek. When you take that and you look at that, right, and you redo the why, and you look at the why and get down to the root, what is it? It's not just my windows leak air. Okay, great. So share with me, how long has that been happening? Where did you first notice it? Is it happening on all windows or some windows? Show me where you think it's happening. Now let's walk to the outside and see it too, right? Before we go to the outside, look at the door. What do you notice on the top left, right, and top right-hand corner? They'll say there's a larger gap from one side to the other. Why do you think that happens? Everything's questions, right? Not freaking talking. So happens because I don't really know. Well, do you realize that, the earth is moving, your house is racking and settling, right? So if I go back and put a square or a rectangle and that rectangle isn't exactly rectangular, not square and plumb inside there anymore. So I try to stick that window back in there and expect a miracle to happen. It's not going to happen, right? If I try to put it on top of an existing window that's already broken and damaged and not doing what it needs to be doing, if I put a window on top of a window that's no longer doing what it needs to be doing, is that really solving a problem? Have I fixed anything, or have I added to the problem? Because remember, retrofit windows or doors, the only thing they're catching is water going from the top, from the surface nothing that's coming back behind the stucco. Remember, if you're not reaching down on the bottom of the stucco and grabbing your weep screed, and you're talking about water running back down in between the window or the wall and the ground, there's big challenges around there. If I'm not talking on a bathroom that looks like nothing's going on, and I'm not talking about wet finds its way to dry, and Owens Corning takes 3% moisture out of the insulation collapsed by a third, if I'm not inspecting a window and talking about underneath the knee wall, Owens Corning tells you 3% moisture allows the insulation to collapse by a third. Think about that condensation on your window, everything that's going through there, right? Water isn't just going to sit there in place. It's going to find its way to other materials like organic materials, right? Same thing as on a bathroom, right? Grout is porous. If they've never sealed it, even though it looks good on the surface, they're probably great cleaners. What's happening behind the surface, you can't see that's a problem. And if you put new windows, doors, or a bathroom in, what is it that's going to cause you to even know there's a problem? Are you going to wait till you smell something? Are you going to pretend it doesn't exist, have situational awareness because you've owned the house now for 20 years and you've just gotten used to living with it? Or are you going to basically open up and do what you're supposed to do and take care of the problem and address the situation? And I think from what I know of you, just a little bit I've met you, you seem like you want to do it right the first time or not do it at all. And we did say that it needed to be done. You told me yourself it had to be done. So really, when you do this, what are your concerns and what do you fear could happen that you don't want to? What do you think you want to run away from? Think about it. Bacteria. Think about dust and allergens coming through the windows, through the doors. Think about heat coming in, fading carpets, fading blinds. I went on a job with Dana where we looked at this couch. This couch had to be $5,000-$6,000 couch pretty easy. And that $5,000-$6,000 couch that looked pretty good, basically the whole back side of that couch was faded from UV rays. The flooring was faded from UV rays. And these windows, which you walk into a house, you'd be prestigious, think they're just so gorgeous, happen to be the reason that cost them over $5,000-$6,000, not to mention the carpet. So that's another $2,500 on it. That just cost them $8,500 to keep what they have. Right? If they went out and bought a new couch, it might cost $5,000 again. What's going to happen to that couch? Same exact thing, right? So do we sell the window or do we sell the paint of what the window's causing? Think about your surroundings, right? What about the stucco? What about racking? What about ceiling? What about water management? What about the way the materials are built? If I put a door or window back in that doesn't do what it needs to do, it doesn't matter who sells it or how much or how little they're selling it for. Same as a bath system. Because if it doesn't address the problems you call us out for, you're throwing your money away, aren't you? You wouldn't want to glue anything over the top, whether it's retrofitting a shower wall, retrofitting a window, retrofitting a door. All you're doing is covering it up with a Band-Aid. You haven't addressed and fixed the problem. You've just added to it. Why do you feel that would be a problem if we did that? What do you think could happen? If water's running down, instead of getting in the canal, are you scared where that water might go? What would happen if that got clogged up? What would happen if you had a bad installer and they caulked over your weep holes and now you had water backing up inside the house? You couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Then the window guy blames the stucco guy blames the window guy, and they call out a roof guy because neither one of them are going to take accountability. Next you know, you call your insurance. Now you got mold in the house. Now your house is uninsurable. There's so many things. We got to build criteria, right? And if you are running into it, you're going to try to swim in a sea of sameness and you're going to clunk vinyl all over because you're scared of price. Then what you need to do is if you don't get yourself competitive warranties and highlight the warranties and then take them through that customer will, manufacturer, distributor, wholesaler, distribution center, basically dealer, subcontractor, and the customer, and you're not living that whole scale and scaring the hell out of them about that route, then again, you're not doing everything you can do. You're selling a product. And if you sell just a window, just a door, or just a shower wall or pan, you are literally competing only on product and price. If it doesn't hurt bad enough and the situation and condition environment does not hurt bad enough, and we didn't dig with the right questions and branch off our questions, then again, we are not doing everything we need to be doing. We are literally treating ourselves like commodity, allowing ourselves to get our ass kicked on price and price only. Now, I know a lot of us don't do that because we have some really good results and we're moving the needle a strong way. But if you are one of those, that's forgetting how important an inside and outside inspection are, how important it is to basically create the urgency, pain, and need, and allow yourself to move that table to that next level, then again, your results are always going to be what they are. Because again, you're finding the right person that's going to that's willing to pay the price and doesn't feel like they need to because it's what it takes to fix the project. Remember, their house was not designed to be taken apart and put back together once, much less twice, much less 3 times. How many times do you feel like your house can take it? And if you can't figure out, reminded me of a story the other day, if you're a window and door rep. I had a rep that had a shutoff switch, and that shutoff switch was $20,000. He couldn't sell anything over $20,000, and he was stuck. He would sell $15,000, $18,000, $19,997, never over 20 though. When he got over the 20, it was his threshold of pain. I said, bro, why can't you sell anything over 20 grand? I don't get it. I gave you a 30 window lead, and you come back with 19 grand. Gave you a 40 window lead, you come back with 19 grand. I gave you a 10 window lead, you came back with 19 grand. I said, I'm confused, share with me. So we started talking, and we found out that 20,000 was his threshold of pain. What he felt like, the value that he could ask when he was in the house, that he was comfortable doing so. So it was a shutoff switch, right? So again, never will I ever decide whether or not somebody will buy my products, and you should not make their decision up for them because you do not share their checking account. You do not build their house, right? So I told this rep, I said, were you the architect of their house? No. Were you the builder of their home? No. Are you their financial advisor? No. Okay. Well, then what gives you the right to tell them how much they should spend or not spend on windows or doors or a bathroom? And he says, hey, I never thought of it that way. I said, well, it's not your fault how many windows are built with the house. I said, so you're telling me if there's 40 windows in a house that's worth 20 grand? No. Okay. So why should 20,000 your shutoff switch? I said, maybe you're not selling the payment good enough. He goes, well, I don't want to sell a payment that's 120 months that has interest. I said, well, you're crazy. I said, why not? He said, because smart people don't want to pay interest. I said, okay, maybe. I said, let me ask you, have you ever flipped a house before or invested into a home? He goes, I did realtor for a while. I said, okay. Well, if you're a realtor, then basically, hold on one second, I'm gonna have to answer a question here. If you're a realtor, then you know the value of homes, right? So what I want you to do real quick, tell me this. If you use that 120 months, this is where I came up with calling it the investor's package. If you use that 120 months and you talk about it, how do you explain it? Well, we got a term you can take out to, 10 years and you can do it on a lower interest rate and it's unsecured loan. I said, this is what the payment would be on that. I said, oh, wow, that's horrible. I said, okay, so no wonder you can't sell that. I said, remember, everything, it's not the song, it's a singer on how you deliver these things, right? So again, people want to do smart things with their money, right? And people like to follow other people, which is kind of that expert opinion, or basically that steady model where you talk about statistics and other things. Can I share with you, John and Mary? Obviously, I know that we're looking at 43,343, right? Which is kind of more money than you expect to spend a day. But again, you said you're definitely gonna get the project done and you really want to do all that or nothing, right? So time out, Mark, you would have walked away from that because it wasn't 20 grand, right? You would not have sold that because your confidence level wasn't high enough. So let me revert back to there, right? So time back in. So sounds like to me, basically the biggest thing you're trying to do is to make sure how you can make it financially make sense. Is that true? Yeah, I know you weren't thinking about it, but if we can make it financially make sense, would you be open to hear that? Yeah. Okay. Well, it needs to be done. And obviously windows and doors are a big outside component. And financial expert David Ramsey tells you a lot of people can't get over what the outside of the house looks like to go to the inside of the house to see how beautiful the bathroom and the kitchens are, right? If you're doing windows. Or you can talk about the same thing on bathrooms. They won't even go, when they go in the bathroom, that might be the deterrent that causes them not to buy the house. Because again, maybe you cheapen it up and it's full of caulk and looks like hell. Okay. On the outside of the windows, think about it. Your windows make up 60 to 80% of the outside of your walls. Think about it. And the rest of it surrounding, it's all stucco. So especially in San Diego, with some of these big, beautiful windows we have here, that makes up anywhere between probably 50 to 80% of the outside of the walls is glass or doors. So if you've got $1 million house or $400,000 house, or in Dallas that time I was calling a $400,000 house, then again, if you take 60, 80% of the value of that home and you place it into the windows and doors, wouldn't that be a fair justification? Maybe even not 40, maybe if not 60 to 80, maybe you take it and cut it in half. So maybe it's 30 to basically 40% of the cost of the home. You know, you realize when they build homes, about 10 to 15% of the project that they put in there are the windows. And if you don't want to put in the same builder grade piece of junk you have in now, do you want to spend 10 to 15%? Do you think you should spend more? Most people are going to say, well, I think more if I don't want to put the same crap in. So again, builders haven't changed. You know, here, in fact, we're talking $800 to $1 million homes, right? 400 on the very low end. So we look at that aspect. We have a lot of people that do projects just like this that are called investors. And these investors basically, they like to use OPM, other people's money, to help them fund their projects. And they're smart because if they keep that money, now they can spend that cash other places in the house, and they don't have to worry about doing it, because if they can take advantage of somebody else's money for a low monthly investment, and then basically maybe if they pay a little bit of percentage, that's okay. Because again, they're using other money and they're freeing up those other assets, right? The other aspect we got to look at is, if let's say that something happened where a recession happened, and now you're stuck holding on to this house where you can't get rid of it anytime soon. If you can't get rid of this house anytime soon, now you want to make sure you don't take a loss on the windows, right? So let's say, or the house itself. So let's say you decide you hold on to this thing for another 3 or 5 years where you don't want to get rid of that house. Now what the great thing is, now you can take advantage of that up to 120 months without any penalty for late payoff. Hell, we got up to 180 months if you want to, without any penalty for early payoff. And you only pay as much interest as you pay on the loan. But secondly, then you can roll it in the asking price of the house, and you've only paid for the windows the amount of time they've been sitting in the house that you've used. Now, let me ask you, doesn't that sound like a smart way to do it? Can you see why investors take advantage of that? Let me ask you, if I could help you with that same program, could we get your project started? Let me tell you this. The beautiful thing, we don't worry about that 40. We're only going to worry about $400 a month. You can afford $400 a month, right? Especially if you pack that money back away for a rainy day. I can help you with that, can I? Can I welcome you to Dreamstar Modeling? After I shared that with him, literally the very next week, he had to buy himself into it. So we had the same conversation twice. But once he got out of his own ears, the very next week, he wrote a $40,000 contract, a $70,000 contract, first one ever he had wrote that big, a $19,000. So I laughed. I thought he fell right back into his old equation. Then he wrote a $130,000 order. And the beautiful thing is they weren't $100,000 order windows. He just got so bought into that program, selling that payment, it allowed his results to astronomically, and it raised his closing percentage by 11 points. I still contact and talk to him all the day. His name's Mark Meyer. Super good guy, looks like Don Johnson. But again, he had made so much money from that, he now swears by it. And he calls that same package we call 6.99 for 120 a day, the investor's package. So think about that, right? Are you in your own ears? Are you in between it? Are you digging down in your questions? Are you doing the things that it takes to make a big difference? Or are you making excuses for why you can't do it? There's somebody out there with the same tools as you, the same aspects, using those things that are being as successful, the most successful that you can be. So you got to ask yourself, there ain't no one out there that's better than you. I hired you because you are you, and there's only one you. So are you going to allow anyone to basically step up and outdo you based on the results you're given? Or are you going to find a way to make things unique and tie it back to the pain and instances and solution, and then make it financially make sense at the end of it like you're the banker? I hope that helps today. I hope you're able to take one nugget out of it, even if it's about that mind and attitude. Hope you can take one thing, because again, at the end of the year, if you just do one thing a week, you take and you grab onto, you get 2 meetings. So if you grab one thing a week and you go changing that stuff actionably, slowly but surely, you can't change everything overnight, but you can take one thing and you can start changing it actively and surely. By the end of the year, you're 52% better than where you started. 1% a week, 52 weeks a year, 1% makes you 52% better than you were last year. If you can do that, I guarantee your income's going to grow, your attitude will be on point, and you will basically start achieving the things you need to. That said, I'm done. Anybody got any questions or any comments? All right. With that said, another recording in the books. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the board.